The oldest existing Chinese fans, made of woven bamboo, date to the 2nd century BC. The folding fan was invented in Japan between the 6th and 9th century. Fans were typically made of paper or silk, and famous artists were often commissioned to paint them. The traditional Asian fan, an object of beauty with a practical purpose. The structure is comprised of bamboo sticks, called ribs. The paper surface is called the leaf. In this fan workshop in northern Thailand, they begin with narrow poles of locally harvested bamboo. With a sharp knife, workers cut them to the approximate length of the ribs, then split them down the middle. Using traditional blades, they shave each bamboo strip to the shape of a rib. Ribs are typically about 2 millimeters thick and perfectly flat, so that they can smoothly slide on top of one another. Workers drill a hole in each rib, 6 to 9 centimeters above the base, depending on the fan size. Then they assemble the ribs on a bolt. The number of ribs and their length are what determine a fan's size. The 2 ribs on the extremities are wider and thicker than the others and are rounded on the outside. These are called thumb guards because you flick your thumb on them to open the fan, and they guard the ribs in between from damage. To make the leaf, they begin by spreading the ribs, spacing them out evenly. They lay this onto white cotton and cut out the semicircular shape of the leaf, with the fabric extending 4 to 6 centimeters beyond the rib tips. This fabric will be the leaf's structural backing, giving the paper rigidity and strength. They make that paper just as their ancestors did, mixing the fibrous bark of the mulberry tree with natural dyes. The marigold flower for yellow, for example, or, as we see here, the root of the madder plant for vibrant red. They mix the dye stuff with the mulberry bark fibers, then gather a thin layer of dyed fibers onto a rectangular mesh screen. They keep repeating this process, adding layers, until they build up the paper thickness they need. Then they let the fibers dry in the sun into a finished sheet of paper. When the paper's ready, they cut a piece to match the shape of the cotton backing and iron them together. The 2 layers naturally adhere to each other thanks to the paper's moisture, and a compound in its fibers called lignin acts as a natural glue. They fold the leaf in half and trace a template in the shape of the lower section of the fan, where no paper is required. Then they cut this part off. They brush homemade glue made with white flour onto the parts of the ribs that will be in contact with the leaf. They lay the ribs on the paper and, with an upward sweeping motion, press them down, at the same time wiping away the excess glue. Next, they trim the leaf, leaving about 2 centimeters beyond the tips of the ribs. They glue the edge and fold it back over the ribs. Then they trim the edges along the thumb guards. Now for the most delicate step of the entire process, folding the fan for the first time. Each fold is permanent and will give the fan its form, both open and closed. So precision is everything. Now the fully constructed fan is ready for decoration with water-based acrylic paints. Sometimes the customer requests a certain theme or scene, but usually it's left to the artist's creativity. The artist can manipulate the paints to produce a range of effects, modifying with acrylic gels, media, or pastes to create the bold effect of oil paint, and diluting with water to varying degrees to create a transparent effect, much like watercolors. The final touch is what's known as piping, paint applied through a cone-shaped tip to produce a raised line. This highlights the artwork with raised details. The paint becomes water-resistant once dry, protecting the artwork from damage, and ensuring this Asian objet d'art will always be simply fantastic.